Jessie, and in my kitchen today we're going to be making Salmon Teriyaki Ravioli. I live in Japan and I like to show Japanese recipes on my channel. And of course, this is not a traditional Japanese recipe. However, I've always thought that salmon teriyaki would go really well with pasta, so I finally managed to put it together. I've done a few fusion recipes on my channel before, like my red wine gyudon or my honey mustard oyakodon. I love doing these kind of flavor experiments, and if you do too, then I'd love it if you would subscribe and experiment along with me. But today, the main thing that we're going to be looking at is how to make the pasta. And to do that, I'm not going to be using any special equipment, no pasta maker, no special machines. We're just going to be doing it by hand. And so the only main thing to be a little bit careful of is how thin your pasta is. We've got to make this as thin as possible, otherwise it's going to be kind of chewy. But I think that's enough of an introduction, so let's see how to make this salmon teriyaki ravioli.
For the salmon teriyaki filling, we're going to be using the usual salmon teriyaki ingredients, but we're also going to be adding garlic and tomato. And this is what you'll need for the pasta. Although you could use a mix of semolina flour and all-purpose flour, today we're only going to be using all-purpose flour. But the amount will really vary depending on how humid or dry your room is. And the olive oil is optional for a smoother, more flavorful dough.
Okay, so we're going to start by making the filling for the ravioli. So I'm going to start by grating or pureeing some garlic. My garlic looks a little bit brown, which is a little bit worrying because I just bought it. Ah, yes, perfect. Ah, that's so satisfying. Have you ever done that before? Ah, nice. And now we're going to add soy sauce, mirin, and sake. And we'll also be adding some sugar and some tomato. It's not just tomato puree, I kind of like having a few chunks of tomato in there. One. I can get some of the juices in there. And you don't really need to put any salt and pepper in this because the soy sauce itself is very salty. So we're going to just put that to one side. Now we're going to go on to cooking the salmon. So first I'm going to add some oil to my pan. For a normal teriyaki, I would normally cover the salmon in flour or potato starch before putting it into the pan, but seeing as we're going to be shredding it up, then it doesn't really matter too much about coating it. So the flavors are going to be kind of different to a normal teriyaki. So basically you can just leave those untouched for about 3 minutes. So it's been about 3 minutes, so we're going to turn these over. So I'm just turning off the heat really briefly, and I'm just going to pour the sake in here and then just pop that over and turn the heat back on. And so basically this will get rid of a bit of the fishy smell, and it will also just kind of steam the salmon, maybe about 2 to 3 minutes. As you can see, there's some like kind of crazy spattering going on. That's because of the sake and the hot oil. So that's why you need to turn off the heat before you add the sake. Okay, so then after about 3 minutes, then you can take off the lid. And then once there's no liquid left, then just turn off the heat. Then we can just take these onto our cutting board and we're just going to shred them up and remove any extra bones. As you can see up here, there is a bit of bone and it should just come off quite easily. But then I just kind of cut it up. So let's put some pepper on this. So now we're going to put this into the pan and just cover it with sauce. Okay, so once there are no more pools of liquid, you can just turn off the heat. And now we're just going to cover this up, let it cool down a little bit before putting it into the fridge. And this will keep for a little while, like maybe a day or two. So I'm going to leave this in the fridge and I'll see you tomorrow to make our pasta. If you've already learned something, then think about subscribing because I love experimenting and I love showing you guys loads of different Japanese cuisine. So I'd love to do that with you. Okay, so it's a new day and my salmon teriyaki has definitely cooled down now. It's been in the fridge overnight. So now we're going to get on to making the pasta. We're going to be doing this by hand, so no special equipment, no pasta machine, no anything. So get ready for a bit of an arm workout. So now I'm just going to add a bit of salt and pepper to this. By adding the pepper, then you end up with some black flecks in your pasta. So if you don't want that on your actual pasta, on your actual ravioli, then you can leave out the pepper and you can just garnish it with pepper later. And then just mix the salt and pepper into the flour a little bit. And then make a well in the middle for where our eggs are going to go, because we want to slowly incorporate the flour into the eggs. So just kind of whisk up your eggs with a fork like this, and then as you do that, little bits of flour will start to come in. And just slowly use your hand to push in some flour. So now what you want to do is cover your hands in flour. At this point it's very important to have the flour nearby. You don't want it to get stuck to anything because it does have egg in it, which is very hard to clean and very easy to get stuck. And if you've never kneaded anything before, basically to knead something, you can just kind of fold it over and then push it down, fold it over, push it down. We're going to start properly kneading it. There's still like quite a lot of flour in here, so okay, that was just like vacuum packed to the work surface there. That's a little bit weird. So as you go along, it will kind of vacillate between being super dry and being super sticky, because you'll be bringing out different parts of the dough. Whew, what an arm workout. So I think finally this is now at a good consistency. So now when you sort of pull it apart like this, then you should see kind of minimal tearing, like this kind of thing. It'll be nice and smooth, and when you touch it, it should bounce back, but it shouldn't get stuck to your finger. So at this point, we now need to let it rest for 30 minutes. Actually, you know what? Before I put this into its wrap, I'm just going to put a little bit of oil. So I've only put a really small amount of oil in there, but it'll just make it a bit smoother. But if you're going to be putting it into a beeswax wrap like this, then you need to cover it in flour, because otherwise it's just going to get stuck. You want as little air as possible in there because you don't want the pasta to dry out. And then we're going to be leaving this to rest for 30 minutes. And the reason that we do this is so that the gluten will relax a little bit, which means that it will be easier to roll and set. Okay, so it's been 30 minutes and this is nice and well rested. So we're going to open it up and see how it's doing. It's nice and smooth. Normally you would cut this into 2 and then roll it out. However, my work surface is fairly small, so we're going to be cutting it into 4 and then we're going to roll it out that way. So I've cleaned my work surface so there's nothing for it to stick to. And once again, we're going to be using a lot of flour to make sure that the pasta isn't getting stuck. I've also switched off my aircon so that it doesn't get too dry. And the pieces that I'm not working on, I'm going to put back into my wrap. And then we're just going to roll. So for the first roll, you don't really need to get it too thin. So what I've done is folded it this way, so it's like this. And then you just turn it round, turn it over, and then roll again. So then just fold it into thirds again, turn it round, and roll. Roll, roll, roll. And if you've made this correctly, it is going to fight you, but that's fine, just keep fighting. Okay, so I kind of want this to be a little bit thicker, so I'm going to just roll it out this way. When I say thicker, I mean wider, not thicker. So yeah, at this point, I kind of just start to stretch it a little bit this way. Make sure you're putting some pressure occasionally onto the edges here as well. So you kind of want a thin layer of flour over the whole thing, because now what we're going to do is just fold it up and put it to one side whilst we do all of the others. And basically what you want to remember is you want to keep them roughly the same size, because we're going to be laying one over the top of the other. Whew, okay, I'm going to get going. I'll see you when I'm done. now I've done all 4 of those, and they're nice and thin, and basically you can pretty much see your hand through them. That's the kind of thinness that we want them to be. So if you can pick it up, but it feels like a little bit flimsy and you're a little bit worried that you're stretching it as you pick it up, that's pretty much exactly the thinness that we want it to be. So here's my salmon teriyaki that's been in the fridge. Ta-da! A scant tablespoon, as they call it. So it's about that much, so, and then just plop that down. Of course, we want to have some space in between each of these so that we can cut them. So I've just made sure not to put the fillings too close to the edge, and then we've got about 2 centimeters in between each piece of filling. Before we put this layer on top, then we need to wet all of the in-between parts so that we can push this down and we can stick the ravioli together. Okay, so now we're just going to add this one on top. And then once they're nice and firmly pushed together, we're going to get out our knife. And then I kind of just cook these little extra bits by themselves as a little snack for later. So you're going to be able to make around 20 salmon teriyaki ravioli. Whew. Okay, so we finally made all of our salmon teriyaki ravioli. And now we're finally at the part where we get to eat them, so all we have to do is boil them in hot water with a bit of salt. A little extra trimmings, sort of fettuccine type thing. Our water is now boiling, so I'm just gonna plop these straight into the water. And they just kind of start spinning around like that. That's kind of hilarious. I love that. These have all started to float to the top now, so I think they're ready to be taken out. And just place it onto the plate.
Okay, so it's not exactly something I'm going to be making every weekend because, man, that takes a lot of energy. But if you're looking to impress someone, this is the way to do it. The soy and the garlic blend together perfectly and create a great fusion dish. But that's it for this week, but in my next video I'll be showing you how to make the traditional salmon teriyaki. Oh my god guys, this tastes so good.